Today we will be covering the generational curse of the house of cannibalism. I mean, the house of Atreus. A story that it is not for the weak, nor the squeamish. It is a tale that I believe should probably have not been written in the first place. Never mind retold, but here we are. In this video, we will be covering the first two generations. The first generation, about a man who tested the gods in the most horrific way and fell out of favor with the Olympians into the depths of Tartarus. And then we have the second generation who used deception and deceit for power and was responsible for the official beginning of this curse. And in the next video, we'll cover the third generation, because trust me, that needs its own video in it. It's a lot. Sibling rivalry to the extreme that even stomachs of iron will wobble. Oh yes, we're going there. Hello, my name is Laura, and I like to rewrite and retell myths, legends, and folklores, particularly Greek myths, the way that they're enjoyed best, as stories read out loud. Haha! And just in time for Halloween, we got a horror story for sure. So I began researching for this video with the sole intention of it just being about Tantalus, the first generation. But oh boy. Oh no, did I fall into a rabbit hole with this story, with this tale, with this curse? And if I got dragged into the pit of this story, you bet I'm taking you down with me. The curse of the house of Atreus is not for the faint of heart. In this specific part, the first part, here are some trigger warnings to be aware of. The second part is much worse. I'm so excited, but also I'm like, why am I doing this? But yes, that's over here. All right, are we comfy? Are we ready? Am I ready? Ooh, and a quick disclaimer. Each myth has many versions and translations over the years, and this is just how I chose to present it today. Specifically with Tantalus, he has 3 different versions of his myth that leads to his downfall, and today I decided to combine them all together. So yeah, just so we're clear on that front. Okay, now hold my hand. We're in this together. Now let me take you to ancient Greece, where the first generation began. Now, to begin this myth, we gotta go back, way back, to the first ever mortals to have divine parents. Things were different back then. In fact, these mortals were so highly favored by the gods that they would even come closer, be invited to Olympus to dine with them. I know, how fancy! Fancy! Oh, an entry or privilege that is completely unheard of for future generations. And I think probably for good reason after we finish with Tantalus. And it was at one of these divine dinings that a certain son of Zeus, I know, everyone seems to be a son of Zeus, but yeah, another one of the OGs. This one in particular would take his blessings for granted, until he commits an act so terrible, so unforgivable, that he would be known as the greatest tale of a man falling out of favor with the gods. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Who is this divine mortal I am speaking of? Before I get into the meat, don't mind me, I'm just laughing at my own puns. We need a quick bio about this man, okay? Tantalus. Well, his name is Tantalus, the mortal son of Zeus and oceanid nymph named Pluto. So yes, to say you have divine parents is not unearned, but it was not just him, no. his wife, Dione, also had divine parents. And together, they ruled over the lands in Lydia. Tantalus and Dione were also parents of 3 children. Tantalus's firstborn daughter, named Niobe. Then we have Tantalus's son, Proteus. And lastly, we have Pelops. Now, Pelops did not do anything personally to insult the gods, but he plays a very important role, not only in Tantalus's story, but for the future generations that are after him. Because what happens to him is... yes, we'll get there. Pelops. Remember the name. We'll be visiting him again soon. Alright, so now we have a general idea of who Tantalus is, right? A king with divine parents, a wife, 3 children, a man wealthy and powerful and lucky enough to dine with the gods. Now, do we think that Tantalus would be grateful, respectful, and dutiful over receiving such fortunes? Ha! Of course not! Don't be silly! Tantalus was greedy, boastful, and had a rebellious desire to test the gods. Where does this all begin? Okay, so above the clouds and parting through the golden gates of Mount Olympus, it was a place that was always warm, always sunny and bright, where it was never windy, never rained or snowed. Their palaces of marble and gold gleamed a hazy glow. Decay, dirt and rust, they had no place here. That was for those earthbound mortals. Within the high-roofed, golden-floored chambers they feasted in, below they had an expansive view of the world, allowing them to observe mankind as they pleased. And Zeus himself being able to clear the clouds whenever he saw fit, thickly pouring goblets of nectar to drink and shoving their mouths filled with ambrosia. And it was amongst this table one evening, Tantalus eyed the bowls and goblets, their divine food and drink, that was believed to not only be magical and cure any ailment, but also gift immortality to anyone lucky enough to drink it. The table was forever pouring and abundant, but most importantly, this feast and the magical qualities that it had, well, this was a secret held from the mortals. Tantalus leaned back, watching their skin glow after every gulp, watching the shape of their jaws sharpen after every bite, the shine on their hair glistening like ribbons of silk as their feast hit their bellies, the indisputable strength and beauty they all possessed, nourished from the table before them. Tantalus waited for them to knock their heads back, pressing metallic cups to their lips until they roared with laughter, spilling their drinks as they spilled their secrets. Forgetting for just a moment there was one of these mortals amongst them, Tantalus. He reaches over, carefully pinching some ambrosia off the plate and wrapping it in a little cloth and putting it by his side. Tantalus, Zeus roared, his father and the king of the gods. Tantalus's eyes darted to his father, his shoulders tensed, his heart thumping harder, faster. Zeus leaned forwards, licking the sweet, sticky drops off his lips. Have I ever told you about the time that I saved my brothers from the pit of my father's stomach? Tantalus smiled and shook his head, though he had indeed heard it. Many times, in fact. But the more Zeus was focused on himself and the pleasure of sharing his heroic tales, the less he would suspect Tantalus for any indiscretion. Tantalus's thumping heart, that was once from fear of getting caught, now was running with excitement, burning through to his fingers. A thrill, almost, from what he was about to do when he got home. Yes. Tantalus, a rebel without a cause. Ha! So it was after this dinner, right? He goes back home. Tantalus, he gathers his friends. Come closer. They huddled secretly, awaiting the gossip. Have you ever wondered what our gods of Olympus feast on? Tantalus asked. One nodded. I have wondered, actually. The other shook his hands, stepping back. Wait. This isn't something weird, right? Like feasting on children or something? The other one jabbed him with an elbow. Oh, come on. You know how the gods feel about harming children and cannibalism? The other one rubbed his arm. Well, I'm just asking. They've kept it a secret for a reason. Tantalus flicked a brow. Want me to tell you? Tantalus said, giddy almost. All three shuffled in closer, intrigued. Well, the gods eat ambrosia and drink nectar. In union, his friends simply blinked. Is that it? One asked. What does that even mean? The other muttered. Tantalus stood up straight, ignoring their lack of enthusiasm. It's so abundant there, they practically have fountains of nectar, pouring from golden goblets to goblet, feasting on plates of ambrosia mountain high. But that's not the most important thing. They eat these because they have magical abilities. They can cure any ailment or illness, and he paused for dramatic effect. It gifts immortality. His two friends, their mouths parted in awe and excitement. And, Tantalus said, pulling out his cloth, I brought some to share. His friends looked at the cloth in the palm of Tantalus's hands as if he had just presented them with a pile of golden coins. Their hands stretched towards it, longing to dip their fingers in its sweetness, wanting to taste divinity, and for it to stream through their veins and pump their heart endlessly. They wanted immortality to surge through their bodies electrically, like the brewing of a storm. But before they had reached that ambrosia, a strike of lightning speared into the ground beside them, leaving a hot black hole and thick smoke rising above. Tantalus's friends, they got out of there. They scurried away quickly, fingers clean, mouths dry, and mortal. Zeus appeared before him, exuding the power that they longed for. Only his power was now filled with rage, and it stung your skin just to be close to him. Tantalus, Zeus boomed like a clap of thunder. How dare you? This privilege that we granted you, the honor of Olympus, and you dare steal from us. Tantalus fell to his knees. I'm sorry, you said that mortals had never tried ambrosia or nectar, that they were not aware of its existence. We did not share ambrosia and nectar with the mortals because we did not want them to know about it. This is food for the divine and the divine alone. I misunderstood, Tantalus cried. I did not know. Forgive me. Zeus scoffed. With any other man, I would have thrown you into Tartarus and punished you for an eternity. Tantalus stared at the ground, feeling a dry lump in his throat as he swallowed. But, Zeus continued, you are my son, and a favorite amongst the mortals. It is not just I who feels this way. Zeus said nothing for what felt like an awfully long time. And finally, he threw Tantalus a glare like the point of a blade and said, you were a fool to think that we would not know what you had done. We know all, we see all, and you know this. From now on, you will be banned from Olympus. Betray me again, and you will not be forgiven. Understood? I understand, Tantalus said, still staring at the ground, but a small smile curled on his lips. He had the thrill of a liar, having every word believed, the thrill of a thief, getting away with stolen goods. Tantalus was high from their forgiveness. After all, the amount the gods favored him was as good as immortality. He thought about how much the gods loved to brag about their omnipotence. But how omnipotent could they possibly be when this entire time Zeus did not know that Tantalus was lying? Tantalus stole the ambrosia by selfish means. He revealed the ambrosia to the mortals because he knew it was a secret and he wanted to be the one to reveal it. He realized at this very moment how much he despised their brags of their all-knowing power and had no plans to stop misbehaving. No! In fact, he already had another test in mind. Tantalus raised his head, looking at Zeus, feigning a pitiful expression. Please allow me to hold a feast for you and the other gods as a sincere gesture of my apology. Zeus grumbled like a rolling thundercloud, and with a stern nod, he agreed. After the king of the gods left, Tantalus knew exactly what he would serve at this feast. A perfect test of their omnipotence. He grinned, flooding with power greater than any nectar could have given him. And he could not wait to see what would happen when he served them their meal. Now, if you were presented with an opportunity to present a feast to the almighty gods, what would you make? A platter of the freshest fruits, perhaps? Or some nicely baked bread? I love bread. Washed down with your most expensive and aged red wine? Or a just slaughtered animal, perhaps? Like a lamb or a pig, sliced by the neck to pour blood in their honor, and then slow roasted, with juices dripping. Tantalus did have a sort of slaughter in mind, but not one we, or they, would ever expect. Remember earlier when I listed Tantalus's children, and there was one called Pelops, whom I said we would come back to? Knife in hand, Tantalus went into his young son's room, Pelops, and as Pelops slept, butchered him and cooked his body parts in a stew. I know, I wish I was lying. This guy is crazy. The night of the feast rolls around. Within a flame-lit throne room, magnificent table presented center, Tantalus's finest platters were laid out. Plates, goblets, the whole shebang. They were shimmering like jewelry against the candlelight. The Olympians arrived one by one, taking seats and chatting away, seemingly pretty happy to be there. All but one, that is. And that would be the goddess Demeter, who was currently in mourning as her daughter Persephone had been kidnapped by Hades. And so instead she sat alone, grief-stricken and fiddling with her spoon in silence. Her mind stressed on circumstances that were far beyond this room and even further from the concern of the mortal realm. Tantalus greeted the gods pleasurably, which they seemed to reciprocate enough. They seemed honoured by the feast and what would be presented to them. Servants entered, holding big clay pot of a bubbling stew, placed in the center of the table, smoke rising. It was ladled and poured into individual bowls in front of the gods. All of the Olympians, but Zeus in particular, glared at the bowl placed in front of him. Mouth clenched, nostrils whistling, breathing slowly. Not looking up, Zeus spoke through his teeth. Tantalus, what is this? But as Zeus was speaking, Demeter, she sighed mournfully, pushing around the meat in her stew with her spoon, then brought it up to her mouth and ate. What later turned out to be a chunk of Pelops' shoulder. Her chews slowed. She swallowed. Her eyes widened. She coughed. She spluttered. But it was too late. The damage had been done. And Tantalus watched her and smiled. You remember my son, Pelops? Tantalus remarked. Zeus slammed his hands on the table, standing up. You didn't, he shouted, a voice so loud it was shaking the glassware on the table. Tantalus let the smile fall from his face and spoke each word as slow and clear as melting ice. I thought you were all-knowing. He slid a glance to Demeter. Doesn't look like it. To Tantalus right now, he felt he was in the right. He had succeeded in not only stealing from the gods, but deceiving them too. He felt like he had tested their omnipotence and he had won. As always, was prepared for the usual round of forgiveness that they would grant him, since he was their son and a favourite. But things were not going as he expected. Not this time, Tantalus! The gods surrounded him, grasping him to prevent an escape. Zeus's chest was heaving with anger. For this, Tantalus, you will be punished in Tartarus. Tantalus's sweat fell cold, disbelieving what he had just heard. Your punishment from here will be eternal deprivation of nourishment. Tantalus, he screamed as they dragged him down to the depths of Tartarus, the deepest, darkest abyss below the underworld, where only the worst of the worst go, to live out tortures and suffering indefinitely. And it was within Tartarus that Tantalus looked down at the pond of water that he was stuck in. His throat was dry as dust, his head ached, and his lips were cracked and split. He bent over to scoop up the water within his palm to drink it. As he did, the water receded into the mud that his feet were stuck in. He looked up, belly shrieking from hunger, feeling faint and weak. Branches from the fruit trees were above him, and each fruit was perfectly ripe and plump. His mouth watered, imagining piercing the skin with his teeth and slurping up the juice. How sweet, delicate it would taste. But as he stretched his hand towards it, the branches swayed away from him, just out of reach, where now he will be forever hungry, forever thirsty, and forever in pain. Fun fact! This is where the word tantalize comes from. But for his stewed son, Pelops, surprisingly this was not the end for him. Feeling sorry for the boy and his butchered fate, Zeus ordered one of the three fates, Clotho, to bring him back to life. Yes. And so she did. She gathered all of his body parts together from the stew and boiled them in a sacred cauldron, rebuilding him into a dashingly handsome young man. And for the shoulder that was eaten, nibbled on, Hephaestus, the god of fire, stonemasonry, metalwork, and sculpture, rebuilt him a shoulder made out of wrought ivory. And from here, we enter the next generation, and his actions that lead to the true beginning of this curse. It's Pelops time! Pelops actually stayed within Olympus once he was rebuilt into a new man and was taken in by Poseidon to be his apprentice. And the older that Pelops got, the more handsome he became. Even Poseidon himself fell for his beauty and they soon became lovers. And it was Poseidon who taught him how to drive the divine chariot, which was huge, golden, and reigned with winged horses. And after many years, Pelops became exceptionally skilled charioteer and decided to finally leave Olympus to make his mark on the world. And where better to go than to the land of Pisa, where King Innomaus was holding a chariot race. Ooh, a race! How exciting. A set of games that King Innomaus had only ever been the winner of. Because you see, come closer. King Innomaus, well, he heard something. A prophecy. I know, them damn prophecies. And it was the prophecy that told him that he would be killed by his son-in-law. So instead of allowing suitors to come and propose to his daughter, he claimed instead that any man who could beat him in a chariot race would win the hand of his daughter. But if they failed, they would be killed. An important detail as well is that King Innomaus was the son of Ares, the god of war. The horses that pulled on his chariot were from Ares. So technically this made King Mouse unbeatable. But this did not stop the suitors from coming and attempting to win this race. Because King Mouse's daughter was the extremely beautiful Hippodamia. If you've watched my Perseus video, then Hippodamia's name should ring familiar to you, except she's actually in this story. She's here this time. So, Pelops arrives. When he learned of this prize, he looked to the stands where she would watch, and mesmerized by her beauty, he froze for a moment. Then she saw him and was equally as stunned. A smile was exchanged. Well. A competition in which he is the most skilled at. And to win these lands and the hand of a beauty like her? Pelops felt like he had just aligned with the fates. He grinned and thought, this will be easy. Radiating confidence and a smug smile, he watched as the other riders go before him. Side by side, the suitor, the challenger, the competitor was on his chariot next to King Mouse, readied on their marks. And when they set off, King Mouse's chariot exploded in front, whipping the reins. The horses cantered so fast, the dust that swept up behind them almost looked like smoke from a fire. The poor suitor, turtle slow and amateur in comparison, King Mouse looped back around and caught up with his opponent and decapitated his head clean off. Pelops's eyes were pinned wide open and his skin drastically paled. Maybe, he thought, the charioteer was just not very good. He tried to convince himself. But over the next few days, he watched 19 men race, and 19 men end up with their heads impaled onto spikes and decorated along the palace walls. With every new bloody addition, Pelops's confidence shedded off him like layers of skin. And even worse, it was his turn soon. Pelops slunk away, running to the shore, and on the sand he called upon the god Poseidon for help. When Poseidon arrived, he saw the fear shrinking in on Pelops and heard his pleas for guidance on how he could possibly win this race. Poseidon observed for himself King Mouse as he raced, laughing manically and swinging his swords through men's necks as if they were made of butter. Poseidon stated, "He has Ares' horses." Pelops nodded, stressing and sweating. They watched King Mouse hop from his chariot, thrilled at one less man to worry about marrying his daughter, as a lean, tanned man with shaggy brown hair ran over, wiping the chariot clean, testing the tightness of the bolts and the strength of the reins. Poseidon's eyes honed in on him. That man, he is a son of Hermes. He can be swayed. His name is Myrtilus. Bribe him in some way and you can win. Oh, Hermes! Say hi to Hermes. He's joining us from now on. Isn't he handsome? The next morning, when Pelops was set to race King Mouse, Pelops approached Myrtilus as he was setting up the king's chariot, polishing it and patting the horses. Nay, I hear your name is Myrtilus, and you attend to King Mouse's chariot. Myrtilus glanced up and nodded. That's right. And you are? My name is Pelops. I'm actually the first he's going to race today. Oh. Well, it was nice to meet you. Pelops made a small, nervous laugh as Myrtilus continued polishing the chariot. Does King Mouse, does he treat you well? Myrtilus lowered his eyes. Well enough. Myrtilus, I have a proposition for you. Tamper with this chariot in a way that would ensure that I will win this race, and as a reward, I will give you half of Pisa when I claim the throne. Myrtilus scowled. You want to cheat? King Animaus is already cheating. I am simply matching him at his own game, Pelops stated. Though he could tell that Myrtilus was not yet convinced. He watched Myrtilus glance up to the stands. His expression flashed surprise for a moment, and then he watched his cheeks blister pink and hot. Pelops curved his head, following Myrtilus's line of sight, and there he saw Hippodamia. Thoughtfully, Pelops looked away, rubbing his lips. If I win this race and win her hand, I will give you a night with Hippodamia. If that is something that you would want. Myrtilus's eyes snapped back to him. You would? Yes, Pelops answered, holding out his hand. And half of Pisa as well. Myrtilus pondered, squeezing a bolt between his fingers. With a subtle flick from his tools, a few of the chariot's linchpins just happened somehow to unscrew, jingling loosely within their little holes. Then Myrtilus shook Pelops's hand. Consider it done. King Animaus approaches, barging his voice at Myrtilus. Is the chariot ready? Yes, it is. Myrtilus lowered his glance, slumping away, as Animaus eyes Pelops up and down. You're a pretty one, he says to Pelops, standing upon his chariot and grasping the reins. A small smile slips, though you won't be for much longer. With both Pelops and Animaus, oh yes, they're ready on their marks, the king shaking his fist in the air to awaken the audience of cheers. Pelops looked to Hippodamia and smiled. She looked away, both bashful and worried over Pelops's assumed fate. And after a countdown, the race begins! The king's horses jerked the chariot forwards. And the faster the wheels spun, the more it ramshackled. Bolts flew out, the wheels wobbled, and the chariot breaks apart. King Animaus, with his reins wrapped around his wrists, flew from the remnants and got dragged to his death. But not before he looked back to Myrtilus, knowing it was him who tampered with his chariot. Dirt scratched down his face like broken pottery, fitting rocks into his eyes and knocking into his teeth. He still manages to spit. I curse you, Myrtilus, that Pelops will bring you your death. So, Pelops won the race. He raises his hands in the air as the audience cheers for the winner. Yay! Not only had he won now the hand and marriage of Hippodamia, but he also had all the lands of Pisa to himself. And he actually held these chariot races annually in honor of his late father-in-law and in honor of the gods, of course. And this was apparently the beginning of the Olympic Games. Now, remember Myrtilus. We only just spoke about him, but remember Myrtilus. And the rewards that he was promised for practically committing regicide. He grew impatient. Not only had Pelops not given him the lands that he was promised, but also he was not given what perhaps he was looking forward to the most. And that was, yes, the night alone with Hippodamia. Whether Pelops was just not a man of his word, or whether he truly loved Hippodamia and did not want to share her, it's not clear. Quite possibly, it could have been both. But either way, Myrtilus and his constant whinging was becoming a thorn in Pelops' sandal. And Pelops, he decided to shut him up. A righteous man of his word would just give Myrtilus what he was promised and be done with it. But no. No. What a silly suggestion. Instead, Pelops asked Myrtilus to meet him by a cliffside to have a little chat. And once Pelops arrived, Myrtilus was already there, clearly distressed, pacing to and fro, feeling that he had been tricked and used, and annoyed even further by Pelops's calm demeanor as he approached. You! Myrtilus spat. My brows are sore. Pelops raised his brows. Now, that is not an adequate way to speak to your king. Myrtilus scoffed. king. All you are is the king of lies, of deceit. You are no king of mine. Pelops hummed, without much of a care at all. Instead, he simply watched the waves crashing angrily into the rock, far, far down below. You promised me. We shook on it. Myrtilus's voice cracked. Pelops squinted at the sky, then strode closer to Myrtilus until they were a mere inch apart. What did I promise again? Myrtilus's mouth parted in disbelief. The Pisa, half of Pisa, and the night with Hippodamia. Ah, yes. That. Pelops sighed. I changed my mind. What? Myrtilus shrieked. You can't. Oh, but I can. I'm just kidding. There was no evil laugh. No. It was much worse. With both hands, he clawed Myrtilus's robes and threw him off the cliff. A Greek mythological cause of death favourite. As Myrtilus fell from up high towards his death, he made sure to focus in on Pelops. As he got smaller and smaller, he muttered a curse. I curse doom to all your family, Pelops, for generations to come, and especially to your sons. Myrtilus hit the water and died, but the curse remained. Everyone out here be cursing each other in this myth. Well, Pelops was unaware of this curse attached to his name, and for a long time, him and Hippodamia did pretty well for themselves, ruling over the lands of Pisa and even expanding further and farther, claiming more lands under their belt, which would be named after him as the Peloponnesus. Fun fact, the name of the The Peloponnesian War between Athens and Sparta in 431 BC. That was named as such because it was in the Peloponnesus lands. Yes, history. Yeah. So, after this, Pelops did as much as he could to stay within the gods' good graces, and even built Hermes. Yes, Hermes. Magnificent temple as a sort of absolution for, throwing his son off a cliff. And him and Hippodamia had many children. All the children. I couldn't get an exact number, but it was somewhere between 14 and 17. The result of this curse was mainly focused on his children, and specifically we will be focusing on two of his sons, and that was Atreus and Thyestes. And after Pelops, he has a scandalous affair. I don't actually know if it's scandalous, but it caused problems, okay? He fathered a son called Chrysippus. And to make things worse, Chrysippus was rumoured to be Pelops's favourite son out of all of his hundreds of children. And it was from here, between Atreus, Thyestes, and Chrysippus, the curse really reared its ugly head to a point where things get completely twisted and absurdly out of hand. It's madness, it's all madness, and would famously tarnish his family name forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. And that is where we're going to finish with part 1, with the first 2 generations of Tantalus and his son Pelops, and in part 2 we will venture into the 3rd generation of Atreus and Thyestes. Ooh, you're not ready, I'm not ready, no one's ready. So we're cutting it off right before it gets completely unhinged. But yes, what are your thoughts, your feelings with the curse of the House of Atreus so far? I'd love to hear from you in the comments. If you have any recommendations, any myths you would like me to rewrite and retell at all, I'm all eyes and ears. And if you want to show any love and support other than being here today, thank you, then you can subscribe or like the video or both if you're feeling crazy today. And I hope you had a great time and continue to have a lovely day, night or afternoon. And I'll see you next time. Bye!